Look, Eric, just send the payment transfer. You saw the power of the last few trips. Yes, I realize I haven't finished paying off every debt in the universe. But we need equipment, renovations, and, staff wages. Eric, I have to get going. Eric, I have to go. Elam and Anatolia aren't going to loot themselves. Where do you think all the treasure comes from? Yes, I've studied archaeology, but I don't have time for this. Just add it to the account labeled blood money then, okay? Bye. And thus, the leech lectures the mosquito. So, if you don't mind me asking, what was all that about? What? Nah, just think about it. Ishtar is the goddess of war. So obviously, expanding your borders, bringing all this treasure and glory for your people? Man, I can't think of a better way for you to bring honor to both her and yourself.
Despite not having been groomed for rule, Sargon had a natural talent for kingship. He built his new capital of Akkad to the north of Sumer, sending his new subordinates a powerful message. He would not follow the traditions established by past kings. No, this was truly a new beginning. An enormous court soon surrounded Sargon. More than 1,000 servants, priests, scholars, and soldiers populated the king's palace, and they all had to be fed and paid. Sargon therefore turned his sights on neighboring kingdoms. Once, the dominion of Mesopotamia had been the sum of his ambitions. But Sargon had changed. The larger his entourage grew, the more he pushed his old companions away. And the greater the riches he amassed, the greedier the flickering in his eyes seemed to me. He hardly spoke of the goddess of war anymore. He no longer visited her temples, nor offered her sacrifices. It seemed that as his power grew, Sargon forgot to whom he owed his throne. And now, as he rallied his armies to conquer the kingdom of Elam, he tempted her wrath.
Hey guys, Ognajteff here, and welcome back to Age of Empires. This time we're doing missions 4 and 5. So, this first one here, we are conquering the kingdom of Elam. So, we get a starter little base here, but we cannot produce our own villagers. Instead, we must rely on our allies for resources and to create villagers for us. So, thus, we must protect our allies and defeat Elam. In fact, the only real objective in this level is to defeat Elam. But you have to do a few things in order to do that. For one thing, your allies, while they're economically able to take care of themselves, they will be unable to militarily defend themselves. So therefore, they're going to have to rely on you, so you're going to have to traipse around the entire countryside here, fighting off Elamite horses. And this is the episode where all ideas of trying to follow a historical army go out the window, because quite frankly, if you're not using camels in this mission, you're not getting anything done. Chariots will not be able to fight the enemy heavy cavalry. So you have to use the camel's anti-cavalry bonus, and it's a good thing that as the Sumerians, we do get a extra armor on our camels. Also, unlike the previous few levels, this one's the first one where we really have to look into the navy. Now, Sumeria was not a naval power in any stretch of the imagination. While they could go up and down the very navigable Tigris and Euphrates rivers, they wouldn't be doing anything on the scale that we'd see in, say, the Hellenistic period, with large fleets of triremes fighting off against each other to establish naval dominance. Instead, what they'd mostly be probably would be transports, fishing vessels, and trade ships, with most of the fighting actually happening on land or in boarding action. However, I bring up the Navy because the Elamite Navy here will send raids against your allies and yourself, so one of the best and easiest ways to sort of get ahead in this mission is to take them out as soon as possible. That way you're not having to fight two enemies at the same time. And unlike Elam, who is hidden behind all their walls and have all their attacks against your allies you have to deal with, if you can deal with the Elamite Navy quick enough, they're no longer a burden.
The pirates of Elam have been driven from these waters. Now we can resume trade with the East and use its profits to support your campaign. Oh, great Sargon!
Getting back to the game here, one of our first objectives is actually to destroy an Elamite war camp situated just north of our city here, and in doing so, sort of stem the tide of raids occurring right on our doorstep. However, there's actually a second Elamite war camp just north of where Akkad itself is. Akkad, of course, being the capital city in which Sargon came from. Now, Akkad is interesting in that, while most historians traditionally have believed that Akkad was founded by Sargon, and by most accounts that's what happened, some references to Akkad existed pre-Sargon, so it may be that Sargon instead took a small village and turned it into a glorious empire. But after dealing with the war camps, we still have to protect our allies, the Hurrians, from being attacked constantly by the Yellow Elamites. And once we've secured our positions by destroying both war camps, we can finally begin the very long siege of Elam itself. Much like their neighbors the Sumerians, the Elamites were actually an isolated culture group, unrelated to all of their neighbors, including the Indo-Europeans who'd come much later and found Iran. In fact, the Elamite people would be in the region from approximately 3200 BC, so contemporaneous with the Sumerians arriving in Mesopotamia, and lasting until destroyed by the Assyrians and then absorbed into the Persian peoples. The fact that they far outlived the Akkadian Empire may be a hint that despite our eventual victory in this mission, which is reflective of Sargon successfully conquering Elam, that hold would not remain, and within a few generations Elam was once more free, and acting as a powerhouse in the region. Now the big problem with Elam is they are very well defended and they've got very annoying heavy cavalry. This annoying heavy cavalry, in fact, is so good that it literally outclasses all my units save the camel. And even then, it's a pretty even fight. So, I have to basically do sneak in hit and runs, wasting a ton of resources, losing an entire army, just to be able to destroy a few production structures and try and snipe their town centers. Once the town centers are destroyed, then I can focus on taking out all their production structures. Once the production structures are destroyed and their town centers are gone and all their villagers murked, then finally Elam surrenders, and this is another victory for Sargon.
Elam is defeated. The few who have escaped our hails of arrows flee into the desert to hide. Victory is ours.
Can a mortal being of flesh and blood become a god? I asked myself this question more and more often as we embarked on a brutal campaign of conquest through lands so distant that I would never have imagined visiting them. The divine will, which Sargon once received and taught his followers, was now indistinguishable from his own. He made it abundantly clear that his will was to enlarge his empire, whatever the cost. I was not the only one who noticed our king's change of character. Discontent brewed among the population. Many of the soldiers, tired and spent from constant campaigns, harbored thoughts of treason. Blood, sweat, tears, and the stench of burning bodies accompanied us on our way east. And it was not long before my fears came true. Barely had we crossed into the kingdom of Subartu when our people took up arms in rebellion. After years of grandiose campaigns, they were sick of the exorbitant taxes that Sargon levied to fund his wars. When I shared the bad news with Sargon, I hoped that he would see reason and accept that he had taken things too far. But the hateful glare in his eyes suggested the opposite.
Okay, so the final mission for the Sargon campaign, all we need to do is capture 7 monoliths that are scattered around the map. Some of them are closer to me, some of them are near allies, and some of them are behind the enemy's walls. Well, thankfully, in this mission, I'm going to introduce you to the single best unit in this entire game, and that is because I'm done playing fair, and I'm just going to use horse archers. They're fast, they hit like a truck, and when massed, nothing can stop them. So, yeah, my plan is basically just to spam cavalry archers and absolutely annihilate the Subartians. And thankfully, I've got my very loyal and never going to betray me allies, the Hurrians, here to help me. Meanwhile, we have these rebel discontents who dare sully the name of Sargon. Yes, I may have pushed him over the edge in hopes of getting more loot. Yes, I may have accidentally turned him into a megalomaniac who wears a bronze mask well before his time. And when I mean that, I mean the mask he's associated with, which showed in the cutscene. Yeah, that's not his mask. That's actually his grandson, Narum Sin's mask. In fact, actually, we don't have a mask of Sargon's. It's just associated with him due to historical just latency. But with that being said, let's look at the mission a bit more. Okay, so after a quick period of building up our resources, grabbing just some builders to create some academies for some phalanx, because as Sumerians, we got good phalanx, we're finally going to start raiding into, liberating our Sumerian villages who haven't gone rogue. They've just been commandeered by malcontents. So, while we're clearing out the malcontents using horse archers, which, as I said, are overpowered, the AI just cannot handle these things, the enemy will just keep charging towards them, and then, sure, their own archers will be able to hit for less damage. And if we pull away, they'll just be able to sit there and wonder why all their friends are getting picked off. But one by one, these villages will be cleared, and eventually the rebels will be crushed beneath our boot. And the surviving villagers will give us all the supplies we ask for, peacefully and unharassed. However, while I'm doing this, the Subartans are not going to be sitting idle. They will send raids to go attack me, and they have their own cavalry archers, chariots, and swordsmen. Thankfully for me, swordsmen can't catch cavalry archers, and their own cavalry archers are so few in number that, once again, just a few of chariots of my own can just overpower and destroy them. So thankfully, I have no issues in that regards, while I continue to just wall up and defend myself from any incursions from that sort of direction. Also, I'd like to really quickly remind you guys from last episode, you guys listening? Sumerians would not have had tamed horses at this point in history, nor would they have been riding them directly. Once again, Sumerians' best unit, the horse archer. Anachronistic in every way possible. Speaking of horse archers...
Oh, Sargon. We have been wandering the desert for weeks and have run out of food and water. Feed us and we will make you our lord.
So these were the Sutian people, a nomadic people to the north of Akkad, who in the later Babylonian period were famed as noble and strong mercenary warriors. Kind of like what I am role-playing as right now. Anyway, the whole idea behind them is you give them food and they will fight for you. Which means even more horse archers for the enemy to deal with. Although unlike you, they don't really have the micro abilities to actually fight the enemy, nor do they have melee to actually take out the gate, so they're kind of useless other than as a distraction and as a roaming monolith pickup. But hey, I'll take the help when I can get it. Especially since my other beloved allies...
Enough of this megalomania! We will no longer accept your self-deification, Sargon, as you bring great misfortune upon us.
You little profane fools. Soldiers, slay the wicked Hurrians who dare to sully the name of their god.
So, yeah, my beloved allies immediately turn tail as soon as things start getting tough. So now I have to juggle not just the Subartans, but now I also have to deal with the Hurrians. And they also immediately attacked, but thankfully they fall before the might of cavalry archers. You're starting to notice a running theme here. That is when I begin Operation Make Them Suffer for Betraying. I mean, do punitive action for their treachery. Yes, that's it. Punitive action. They've earned this. The other lies I tell myself so I may sleep at night. Anyway, the whole idea behind the Hurrians here is they were an allied people to the Akkadians throughout the time of Sargon and through to his grandson Naram Sin, who I mentioned earlier, who was actually connected to the mask. But it should be noted that the Hurrians would actually long outlast the Akkadian Empire, as the Akkadian Empire would collapse shortly after the reign of Naram Sin and his heirs. But the whole idea here being that the Empire would survive Sargon, though. In fact, actually, Sargon would live to a very ripe and old age, as he would actually go on to live probably into his 70s or even 80s, depending on when he took the throne, as he would rule for 54 years, according to the king tablets, or the king lists, I should say. So given that in mind, he has to have a long and strong reign, with him fighting rebels and defeating enemy empires and going as far west as Anatolia and even possibly Cyprus, well into his old age. Which is actually quite impressive that he still got a long and prosperous reign, if a bit tumultuous, ahead of him here. Now, round 2 against the Hurrians here. I got the archers, we've already bled them dry of their units, and oh look, they actually have a few more, never mind. I stand corrected. Oh wait, I was about to say, until now, but nope, it looks like they're just going to do the casual trickle in so I can pick them off one by one instead of charging as a full unit. Oh well. Meanwhile, I've got all my chariots all ready to go, and yep, there we go, that should be everyone. Let's just charge ahead and snipe their town center. What say you? After a bit of fighting here, yes, their town center is destroyed, Hurrians are defeated, and that just leaves Subartu. And nothing remains of the people who betrayed me, except for the fact that they do outlive this thing, and they will go on to live alongside the Babylonians, the Syrians, and other Middle and Late Bronze Age people, but traitors are still defeated in this case. So after a quick run around the world as we capture all the monoliths and the surviving villages of the Sumerians, and destroying those rebel curs, I'm just going to use my archers here to snipe towers, because that's what archers are for, right? Destroying buildings. And we're going to talk a little bit about Subartu itself. Subartu was the kingdom directly north of Akkad, and actually represented the northern axis. So Akkad divided the world in 4 directions. So to the north was Subartu, to the south was Sumer, to the west was Umaru, which was sort of like northern Syria now. And then to the east was Elam. At this point, he had conquered south and east, and now we're moving north and west, with expeditions that would go, like I said, possibly as far as Anatolia and Cyprus in the Mediterranean. With all of our preparations done, all the enemies beginning to be under siege, and us finally picking off their forces, it was time to advance inwards towards the lands of Subartu and destroy their city. However, that's not our objective here. Our objective is only to take the monuments. So as soon as we send at least a couple units by that monolith there in the north, we should win this game, based off of the fact that we captured basically everything around the map, save the 3 inside their base, and we need 2 of 3. Okay, so if we capture the 1 then, it's not entirely end. We need to capture both that one and the one immediately next to it. But once we cleared through all the forces here, it would be our victory. And once again, they are no match for the power that is the cavalry archer. Fast and swift, we're able to overwhelm their forces with hails of arrows as we stomp down and destroy their forces, capturing both monoliths and securing the victory. And with that, I thank you guys all for watching. This has been Ognajteff, and I'm off to go talk to Sargon about getting paid for this expedition. See you guys next time in Age of Empires. Ognajteff, signing out.
Can a mortal being of flesh and blood become a god? The answer is no. No matter how much power a man attains, anyone who towers too far above others is doomed to fall in the end. Sargon was the king of kings, the most powerful man that had ever walked the earth. His empire, the first that mankind had ever seen. In the temples, Sargon had replaced the statues of the gods with statues of himself. And now, truly believed that he was divine. Yet I had seen him bleed. I sought him out after the sack of Subartu, only to find him standing atop a mountain of gold and corpses, precious stones passing through his fingers. He did not listen when I told him that this madness had to end. Once, I left my sword in its scabbard to spare the man who would be my king. But things were different this time. This was no man standing in front of me. No deity. It was an evil demon from the underworld, striding the earth to claim the souls of the innocent. I then remembered the prophetic words. The blood of the innocent will be paid for by the blood of the One. I plunged my blade deep into Sargon's chest. As he stared at me with wide eyes, a strange, wicked smile appeared on his face. Even in the face of death, Sargon never ceased believing in his own immortality. I have no such delusions. As old age withers my once supple frame, I welcome the journey to the afterlife, satisfied that no more innocent blood will be spilled in the name of this false god. Yet, I fear Sargon's legacy. The vices of power and a desire for divinity can inspire grim changes in even the most noble of men. I can only pray that for every haughty Sargon, there will be a humble Ushar, guided not by delusions of grandeur, but by a simple conscience of what is right and what is wrong.
Oh my god. What have you done? He wasn't supposed to die here, not now! No, no. There's been enough death this day. Perhaps. Perhaps not. But I will concede your point. I am just as bad as the tyrant that stands at your feet. Or perhaps even worse. In some respects. Greetings, A1. To what do I owe the pleasure? Cut the pleasantries. I need a paradox report done in UN02B, please. You can consider the use of my studio space as payment. Oh, very well. I find those terms agreeable. Though I would like to see you in my office. Effective immediately. We have much business to discuss. Oh, yeah, I guess I've just been falling into some of my old bad habits. Video games? Yeah, something like that.